Welcome to the Gaming Bench. Today I'm building a game that's commonly known as Mancala, but Mancala is actually the name for a group of similar games. This version with 12 pits that is most common in America is more properly called Wari or awari or even Kalah. But if you want to get into the history of Mancala, I'm dropping a video next week that'll do a deep dive into the rules, history, and strategy. So check back next week. But for now, let's get building. I'm building this Mancala set for my youngest kid. Apparently they tell me it was their favorite game when they were in daycare. Considering that they're now 20 years old, I guess it really stuck with them. But they asked for the game and they asked if I could make it out of some fun exotic hardwood, and since this kid loves all things yellow, it was a no-brainer to make it out of Canarywood. So I bought this crazy huge plank of lumber. It's 8/4 thick. If you don't speak lumber, that means it's 2 inches thick. Well, not really, because the way that we talk about measurements of lumber in America is weird. So 8/4, it's not really 2 inches, it's like 1 3/4 inch thick. But anyways, it's still probably the thickest piece of lumber that I've maybe ever worked with. So there was a lot of ways that I could approach building this board, and maybe you can tell from the chaos of my bench that I've been experimenting with the best way to do it. My first thought was to just carve the depressions directly into the board, and that's honestly why I bought such a thick piece of lumber, so I could have plenty of room. Did a test piece here. You can see where I used my router with a cove bit to make this depression, and I kind of like it, but I don't know, I kind of don't. I experimented with maybe an oval size too, doing the same thing. This is with a straight bit with straighter sides. A hole saw to make a round bit, and I think where I've landed is just to use a 2-inch hole saw in a 1/4-inch piece of material, round over the edges, and then laminate it to the top of another board. And what I think I'm going to do is use a contrasting species of wood underneath it so that you'll have the canary wood on top and something down below, probably this walnut. I think that will look good. I made a paper pattern, drew it out on my computer just to get a sense of how long it needed to be and to space the holes. And this board is a little thinner, or it's not as wide as I would like. The depressions get really close to the edge, and I did some test pieces and I don't like the way that looks. So what I think I'm gonna do is cut this canary wood plank in half, add a runner of walnut down the center to give it a little more width, and then I'll start drilling holes into it. So first thing I need to do is plane this down to the thickness I want, about 1/4 inch, then cut it in half. Made a quick sled to run this through the planer because my planer won't plane down to 1/4 inch by itself, but more importantly, there's a little bit of a bow in this board, so I'll shim it up, use some hot glue to tack it into place, and run it through so I can straighten it. Got this cut down to size and cut in half. I have the walnut that'll go in the middle. So this is what the board will look like with the walnut strip down the middle between the canary wood. So now I need to glue up the top layer so I can drill the holes through it for the pits. Okay, with this sanded, I can move on to drilling the holes into it. And full disclosure, this is the second time I've got to this point. I went through the whole process and got to here, and I wasn't loving this, but for several reasons. Like, these are kind of deep, the holes are too close to the edge. I decided I didn't like the maple, but I thought I could power through it, but I decided to start over. So now I'm back, caught up to the point where I was before I decided to start over. And, you know, full disclosure, that's why this video is going to post late. Then I'm just going to center punch all these holes, and then I can use my hole saw to cut them out. All right. Not sure if it's the hole saw or the crappy Harbor Freight drill press, but this isn't cutting as well as I had hoped.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
All right. Now for the bigger holes. Holes drilled, rounded over on the router. I need to clean this up with some hand sanding, but it's coming together. All right, looks pretty good. I am going to trim up the ends, get those nice and flush. Took this over to the router table, rounded over all the edges, gave it one final sanding up to 220. And before I put finish on it, one thing I want to do is here where I filled this knot in with black epoxy. Last time I had a knot on walnut that I filled like this. When I finished it, it had a shininess to it that I didn't really like. So I consulted with a friend of mine who knows way more about woodworking than I do. Thanks for the consult, Jeff. And I'm going to try to sand this a little bit, scruff it up, so it'll be hopefully a little duller and not as shiny when I actually put the finish on it. You'll see how it goes. Took this outside and hit it with 2 coats of spray-on polyurethane. I'm gonna give it a real light sanding with 1000 grit and then use some brush-on polyurethane, mostly because the spray didn't get inside all of the ovals and I didn't have much left, and I ran out before I could finish and put a second coat on the bottom. And this little spot where I use the black epoxy is still shinier than I like. I assume it's because the finish is just sitting on top of the epoxy, right? It doesn't sink into it like it does with the rest of the wood. So I'm going to scuff this up again. I got some uneven spray on all of these pits. And it's done. I am pretty pleased with how this turned out. It's funny, it's nothing at all like I expected it, right? I started with this giant block of Canarywood and I thought it would be a little plainer and carved out, and now it's this Canarywood and walnut version that still, I think, looks really great. Again, if you want to learn more about the rules, history, and strategy of Mancala or awari or wari, I'll drop a video next week that does a deep dive in that. And of course, if this is the kind of stuff you like, I hope you'll like and subscribe. See you next time on The Gaming Bench.